I talk to young people, they'll tip me on to something. If I respect their taste in music, they go to the head of the pile, and I go, all right, I'll listen to that.
Okay. I mean, that's a pretty good way to work is just use people who are listening to shit now. See,
I'm
my
not
thing
wearing
is
these headphones, so I look like you.
see, I go to the dads and I go like, "Ooh, what records from like the late 70s did I miss out? Like what are some like deep cut
Wait a minute,
bands?"
wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Go ahead.
So, yeah, I
Oh, there
I
you
kind of
go.
do the same thing but opposite. Where I use the streaming too, but I'll be like, "Ooh, give me obscure like early 70s bands."
Well, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you have to expand your fields of music because if you the longer you live, the quicker you get bored with shit that you're used to. And the quicker that you'll become an old person and start saying, Jesus, this new music sucks. And you start to get into stuff that, you weren't into at the beginning. I can tell you a shitload of like legendary bands that I wasn't that impressed with when they first came out. I mean, some bands like, particularly like Led Zeppelin, I acknowledged their impact at the time, at the moment. I liked a lot of their recorded music, but having seen them live, and also having seen their concert film, I said, "These guys suck." They just are not. I mean, they're not a cohesive, good sounding band. And I still don't know what I would think of them live, but more and more and more, I respect the complexity of their music. And I used to argue with somebody, and I wish that I was still in touch so that I could tell him that he was right and that Robert Plant is an absolutely brilliant lead singer.
Well, Robert Plant would tell you that the first 2 albums he didn't know how
Right.
to sing. Like he didn't learn how to sing until Zeppelin 3.
You know what? I'll tell you, it's interesting that we're even talking about him because I I've seen him interview a few times, and you know how they ask you, what celebrity would you like to meet? He goes to the top of the list. He's just such a down to earth guy,
Oh yeah.
and he was the living embodiment to me of what a rock star is. I mean, this this guy could blow his nose on a girl's sleeve and fuck her. It's just like that was it. There's nothing that this guy could do wrong that a groupie wasn't gonna say, "Oh, blow your nose on my snatch, Robert."
Oh yeah.
He was just that kind of a rock star, and yet he comes across as, I wouldn't say humble, but just down to earth. Like, just,
Yeah.
like, not full of himself.
Oh yeah, I've listened to some of his newer stuff. He's had a few. I mean, he's been doing a lot of solo stuff since Led Zeppelin, but his last like 3 albums have
The
been
the
really good.
the comp the, what do you call those? When you work with somebody else.
Oh, yeah, like a collaboration.
Yes, thank you, that's the word. Those things have been, like, really, and it's like people you would never think that he would sing with.
Dude, he did a couple songs with or he did a full album with her too, but she's like a Welsh folk singer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, spectacular music. I mean, he's been and like his band that he's been working with has a lot of like Middle Eastern and like East Asian influence. It's really interesting stuff.
Cool, cool, cool.
Yeah, totally different than Roger Waters on the Pink Floyd side. He's a lunatic of all lunatics.
Well, we could talk about music forever, dude,
Oh, I
so
know we could. This is going to be the start of the podcast. I'm just going to let it run from this conversation because I think this is a great intro. Um, but yeah, for those of you who whatever. But yeah, welcome to the podcast, everybody. Welcome to On Their Way Up, show about up and coming entertainers or the up and coming days of established entertainers. My name is Spencer Gordman, and today I am joined by a very special guest. He started out in New York years ago and then moved out to the Midwest doing stand up comedy. He is one of the most veteran comedians in the Kansas City scene, which means that he's really old. Uh, but he's hilarious, and I don't know. I'm excited to talk to him. Thanks for being on the podcast, Mister Rod Reyes. How you doing,
my
man?
pleasure, my pleasure, and, I like, the On the Way Up, although I have to say if I'm so blessed, the only place up is,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I'll be happy to consider it on my way up, but,
You know what? I'm Jewish, so I know I'm going down, so this is as far up as I'm gonna
no,
get.
you're just not getting into Catholic heaven, which is no big deal. You know, you'll get into Jewish, whatever it is. But, I left the Catholic Church, interestingly enough, because I grew up in a heavily Jewish neighborhood, and
Oh,
I had
really?
yeah, oh, yeah, I grew up in the Lower East Side of New York, and that was still at that time, one of the most heavily Orthodox Jewish neighborhoods. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
there were dairy restaurants in my neighborhood. I don't know if
Okay.
you know what that means, man.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Well, yeah, yeah, but there were dairy restaurants where, Hasidic Jews would go so they didn't mix the meat, and which I didn't even understand till later on. And, of course, I was just like, whatever you guys want, if that makes you happy, But I grew up in a heavily a Jewish neighborhood, and uh, Jews weren't going to hell, but they were going to limbo. You were just going to float out, and like nobody gives a shit
Just
about your
hanging out.
yeah, your soul is just floating in mucus, nothing. And I was just really appalled. And I was like, I don't want to go to a heaven without them. If your heaven won't let them in, it's kind of horrifying. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Talking Heads song Heaven.
Uh, I'm not sure. I don't know.
It's a brilliant song. It's a satire, and it basically says that nothing happens in heaven. You know,
Yeah.
like they have a party that starts at exactly the same time. Everybody gets there. When the party's over, everybody leaves, and then it starts all over again. It's just mind-bendingly horrifying. And they say they heaven is a place where nothing ever happens. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, it's crucifyingly, like, dark in its way, and it's such a, like, light little song, and then you listen to the words, and it's like, "Holy crap."
Yeah,
So
it
that was that
'cause
was
they were a
my
'90s band,
idea of
right?
Catholic heaven. I said, "No, thanks."
Talking Heads was what era? Were they '90s, early 2000s?
I'm sorry, what?
Were they, like, '90s, early 2000s?
They were actually '80s.
Oh, they were
Their
earlier?
first album was Talking Heads '77,
Oh, okay. It's just
and
a
I
band I don't
don't
know about.
I don't even remember when they broke up, but I think that they had already broken up pretty much during the later '80s, because that's when David Byrne uh, recorded Ray Momo, which was like this thing he did with all these Brazilian artists. And also the movie Stop Making Sense came out, and in that movie there was a two-song segment for the Tom Tom Club, and the Tom Tom Club was what the other members of the band were doing while he was off doing his solo thing.
Oh, gotcha. Interesting. Because there was, like, an era more recently, not current, but just, like, more recently, where you would have, like, super poppy songs, but the
Yeah,
lyrics would be really fucked up.
yeah,
And it
yeah.
was just, like, a weird contrast. Because like,
Well,
typically it's not
and
that way.
see, it was my wife who told me about Pumped Up Kicks. She was like,
Yeah.
"Did you hear that song? And it's like this, like, la 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 song, and it's about kids getting shot." And I was like, and then the first time I heard it, it was like, ah, like,
Yeah. And it's like really that became like a massive like hit radio sensation and it's
yeah.
that dark. It's like
I'll tell you one more quick Jewish story about my neighborhood.
yeah, for sure. This is
Every day on my way to school, I used to take the bus to school. That was not a very long ride, except if it was weather like this. And I used to pass a billboard, and it was for a prayer shawl. Some of the writing was in Hebrew, but in English, it was the English message. And it was for a tallis, which I learned later on was the prayer shawl.
yeah.
And the brand was Zion. And it would say, "You'll pray better in a Zion tallis," right? But when I was a kid, I didn't know the difference, so I thought it was Zeontelis, and I said, "You'll pray, but what the is a Zeontelis?" You know?
That's what this is like. Is it a new shoe brand? Like, is this just a
No, I
help
mean they
helps you
showed
pray better? Like, what are we doing?
they showed the thing. I mean, they showed a little picture of the dog, but
Zeontelos.
I was like, but I thought that that was a Zeontelis. You know?
By the way, that's the most Jewish thing ever. A big billboard. You'll pray better in our talis. That is as Jewish as it gets. Like all they're missing is a picture of a blintz on the billboard, and that's like you can't get any better. So you said you grew up New York. I want to see what you're born in the 50s or late 40s.
1949, buddy.
49. Okay, so take me through like especially when did you start stand up then compared to then?
Well, I didn't start stand up until I was 40 for a
Okay.
number of reasons. Principally, my personality, which does I'm pretty thin skinned. I'm really kind of the wrong person for stand up. I am. I mean, I'll admit it. You have to have a real thick skin, and I don't. Now, when I was drinking, that thin skin would have probably given me beer muscles that would have probably gotten me beat up a lot more than I would have liked to admit. I could defend myself, but I'm not big, So, but I do have a big, sarcastic mouth, and I would have written checks that my fist couldn't have covered. Um, but my brother was the opposite. Ricky was very sensitive, but had a much better shell. So Ricky was able to go up, and it didn't matter. It just didn't matter. You weren't going to see him sweat. You weren't going to see him crack. It took a lot uh, for people to get under my brother's skin. My brother was a very successful comic. He had an HBO special. He um, he was a successful actor. He was in Godfather 3. He was his real claim to fame was the movie Ghost, where he played Willie Lopez. And
Wow.
so I wrote a good deal of material for my brother, and the plan was that Ricky was going to become, the personality, and I was going to be the writer behind the scenes. And I will go to my grave saying this: if Ricky was alive, if he had made it, uh, he would have gotten a TV show without a doubt. He just he had everything that you would want in a TV show and a TV personality. Um,
So then
what do you, yeah.
what do you think it was in your family with both of you guys, you know, comedians and writers and actors and kind of these I know you got a pretty big personality, so saying that your brother was the real personality out of you two is kind of surprising. What was going on in your house growing up that led to you guys
Oh
being that
my
way?
God. Well, we're a loud family, and if you wanted to be heard, you had to open up. You had to open up, which is odd because my sister. Well, I have two sisters. One of them is has also done some acting and has some really nice credits, and the other one is the quieter one, and she, without a doubt, is the most successful. I mean, she owns 3 houses in Vegas,
Yeah.
um, and she
Wow.
has a nice pension. She's just going around the world playing golf in every state. She's going to see every stadium. She and her husband go see every baseball stadium in the country. That's their life.
Damn.
And they're living their very very best life. But growing up. Um, you, we no one, especially my mother, never said anything quietly. She just let it rip. As a matter of fact, she would yell at her mother, who was living with us, and she would tell her, "Ma, shut up, mind your own business." And so my concept of being an adult was being old enough to yell at your mother and tell her, "Shut up and mind your own business." Which is, and then later on, she was like, "You'd ever listen? Why would I? This is the example you set."
Yeah.
But we we there were certain TV shows we would watch together as a family, or movies we would go to, uh, we would just talk at the TV and make jokes, and that was it.
Uh,
That was
correct me if I'm wrong, but you grew up in a Puerto Rican family, right?
my father's parents are Puerto Rican. My mother's parents are Venezuelan. So
Wow.
we're pure Latin, but
Do you think
if you're gonna,
that
yeah,
had anything to do with like the fiery personalities at home, like
I
that
don't,
kind of energy?
I don't know because I think personalities are what they are. I think there are cultural things um, that certain ethnicities have, like the English don't show much emotion,
Hmm.
that it's the phlegmatic thing, but Latins are very passionate. We let our emotions out. Um, but still, even within that framework, people are individuals. There are going
Oh
to
yeah.
be people that are quiet by nature. My sister Valerie is not a loud person. She could be very funny when she wanted to be, but performing me was absolute. She was never going to do that under any circumstances. I mean, I will say this: she loves us enough that how to say, I wouldn't do that to save your life. If it came down to my life, she loves me enough to do a 5 minute set.
Right.
And if it didn't work, she'd want her money back or something like that because that's the only reason she would get up and do it. My sister Angel is an actress, but she would never try comedy because she's watched me and my brother do it and just knows that shit is not easy. It's
So
just not easy.
you started when you were 40. How long was that after you and your brother, or how long? Like, because your brother, you said, started doing stand up earlier, and you were
Oh
writing
yeah,
for him and
yeah, yeah,
helping.
yeah, yeah.
How long were you doing that before you got on stage yourself?
Oh, well, I got up on stage at 40. I mean, I started open micing at 40. I don't know if that's what you're asking me,
But
but
like, how long were you writing stuff with your
oh,
brother
no, no, no.
beforehand?
Well, my brother was doing comedy at a successful level for probably a decade before
Wow.
um, I got on, and he started maybe 5 years even before then. Ricky started street performing.
Oh,
He
interesting.
was performing in the streets, and that takes an entirely different level of skill and confidence. I mean, I think when I'm on a roll, I think I'm as good as anybody.
Yeah.
I'm a good writer. I'm not a hack. My stuff's fairly original. But when you street perform, you have to have an extra gear of personality. I think I may have a little of that instinct, but I have never worked on it, nor do I think I ever would. And I'll tell you one instance where I know for sure that I demonstrated it. I took a woman that I was dating to see an art exhibit in
Okay.
Boston. We went to see a Monet exhibit, which was not going to go through New York. So Boston was the nearest city where it was. She was a big Monet fan. I said I would take her, but we didn't have tickets. So now I get to the museum. We have a hotel, blah blah blah, whatever. So we're committed to being there. Get to the show, and I'm like, and she was the type she didn't like making a scene. So I'm like, anybody got tickets?
Were you trying to scalp tickets to a Monet exhibit?
I wasn't trying to scalp. I was trying to buy them. If
Okay.
somebody was selling, they could have tried to scalp me.
Right, but
Uh,
yeah, okay. This is
uh,
hilarious.
but anyway, so uh, she was inhibiting me. So she says she's gonna go to the bathroom. I'm like, okay, great. As soon as she leaves, yo, I need tickets. I need 2 tickets to the Monet exhibit. Yo, two tickets to Monet. You can watch me go in. I'm not a scalper, just an art fan. You can watch
That's
within
hilarious.
within the 8 minutes that she was gone to the bathroom. I got 2 tickets. One of them somebody gave me, and one of them I paid face value.
Damn. You've been like, I got 6 tickets now. I made profit. You
If
guys
I
can
stayed
work.
out there longer, I could have probably done it. But I got the 2 tickets, and interestingly enough, the next time I did that was a Matisse exhibit in New York, and it was the same deal. It was the last day of the exhibit, and this had been a sold out exhibit, and there were actually people scalping tickets to that show because people were coming from all over the world, not necessarily just to see it, but if they were in town while that exhibit was around, that was one of the draws. So
Hmm.
people from Japan were coming, it was a big deal. So I go, and I start, anybody got tickets, anybody got tickets, and I see this woman, and she's like walking backwards, and there's these 3 guys walking towards her. One of them, a guy in a suit, and he's like, no, I just want, I'm gonna. And she's like, no, you're a scalper. And I turned to her and I said, Miss, if you have tickets, I'm not a scalper. She takes a look at me. She goes, sure you're not. And I said, Miss, take a look at me. Take a deep look at me. I know you may think something because of the way I'm dressed or the way I appear. I said, but I've been to Georgia O'Keeffe. I've been to Monet in Boston, and I went all the way to Boston to see it, and blah, 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 blah. And you could watch it. So I could see her face start to crack a little bit. She, she sold me the tickets. I went in, and I was like, who's going to
That's hilarious. Yeah,
we do
that's
we do it
you're.
all for the art.
Oh yeah, and you probably had a good time doing it though. You probably had a good time like bullshitting around trying to get the tickets.
Well, I mean, the result is the reward. You score, and you're like, "Yeah, man, yeah, I did this." I did this.
So you first get on stage when you're 40. What was the New York comedy scene like, kind of around 1990?
A bit different than it is now, but not substantially. I think that comedy in general has changed. And to be honest with you, I don't think very much about how it's changed because it doesn't involve me. But uh, it was much more of a community, and people helped each other a lot more when I was open micing.
Yeah,
And I will say to this day, even here in Kansas City, a comic will help another comic more than a booker. Well, you guys don't even have bookers, that are actually professional bookers, you know, booking legitimate shows. In New
no,
York, there were a lot of clubs that were booking, one night events, bar shows, all of these that were worked through bookers that knew that they could get them the kind of talent that they needed to put on a successful show.
interesting.
Because this is what I will tell you that I have made a mantra of mine and have tried uh, to get people in this scene to understand and embrace is that comedy cannot survive mediocre.
Yeah,
Comedy can barely survive good. I'm not going to
yeah.
blow smoke up your ass because you've kind of accused me of that in the past, but the show you put on was a fabulous show.
Thank you.
Every comic down the line kicked ass. Nut did okay. Your audience saw a terrific show from top to bottom. That encourages people to come back. If all you got is, that was pretty good, you're not going to get people to say, I don't have anything else to do next month. I'll come back for pretty good. You
Right.
know, it's got to be exceptional. They got to have a great time, and it's got to be that they're pulling your coat at the end of the show going, when's the next one?
Yeah,
You
I
know
mean,
what
I
I
think
mean?
people don't like my background is in business. My father, my grandfather, like my family is all business. You ever heard of the store Gordman's? I don't know if it was around when you moved. Richmond Gordman's?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, it was like a retail store and it was originally started by like my great great uncle. when he got stuck in Omaha traveling from the East Coast to the West Coast, and then it was in my family, and then a lot of family drama with it. But I mean, now it's pretty much all but dead. Uh, and but so like growing up, like talking to my grandpa, my dad, very business sense. I'm a marketing major, so I also think in a business sense. And one of the things is quality of product can, if it's good, it's a good start. But if it's bad, that's the end all be all. Like if you don't have quality of product, you also have to have other things to be successful. But without something that people want and people find value in, it doesn't matter how good you are at the other stuff. Nobody will keep coming back.
Sure. Exactly.
And I think
Exactly.
people who run shows don't factor that in quite enough. Like
Right.
obviously they want to have a successful show, but it's like, listen, you have to run this like a business, and if you want
Right.
repeat customers, you have to have
You know,
a
I've
product that they want.
I try not to rain on people's parades, but I've seen a couple of kids. I heard a kid talking at Brett's show, and this kid says, "Oh man, I got this show. I'm doing 45 minutes." I'm like, "Dude,
Oh yeah,
you can't do you can't do 10."
yeah. Oh,
You know, that
anybody?
and then he's going to get a bunch of people to be on this show that he's hoping aren't going to upstage him, because that's even worse. If the opening acts blow away your closer, that's that's disaster.
Well,
You
it was two. So that show was two comics. And by the way, I know what you're talking about. And anybody who listens to this who's from the scene knows exactly what you're talking about. It was that comic and one other guy.
Right,
Neither of them had done stand up for maybe, I'd say between the two, they probably had 50 sets between them. And
right,
like, it was Curtis, Curtis
yeah,
Braxdale.
yeah,
He lives like 2 minutes away from that bar, and he had a friend
right,
go and was like, "Oh, it was rough. It was rough."
right. Yeah, Curtis would have been a better fit.
Oh
Curtis
yeah,
could Curtis could deliver 15 good minutes.
yeah, but it was just like,
Maybe more. I don't. I've never watched him, but for the time that Curtis has been on stage that I've watched him, he's got at least a good lead into it.
oh
You
yeah,
know.
he's got a good 10-15
So,
without a doubt.
but one of these cats, and since I'm not going to mention any names because you know who I'm talking about. One of these guys was at that mic, at Brett's mic, and he's doing crowd work. And I'm like, dude, you at a mic and you can't do you doing
Yeah,
crowd work.
yeah. Open
So what do you do? Oh, okay, that's good. I
crowd
have
work
some.
at an crowd work at an open mic is like, I think just people have this perception of like, hey, I'm on stage, this is great, and it's like, no, dude,
Right,
this is a workshop. This is
right.
you putting more material together.
Well, listen, there are some people that have an absolute knack for crowd work,
Yeah,
and it's just instinctive, and they're sharp. There's a woman named Sue Costello, and Sue Costello is an exemplar of what can happen in this business, where she gets a moment of heat. They gave her a TV show that she wasn't ready for, but like after 7 years, you know, boom, they're giving her a TV show. They're pimping this shit up. Now, when they actually ran it, they ran it at the worst times, and it didn't get any traction. And they will yank it just as soon as they give it to you. But she made a little bit of a name for herself, blah, 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 whatever. But now she's talking about Jay Moore, and I don't know if you know who Jay Moore is, but he
yeah.
was Jay actually was a very successful comic and had a pretty good movie career going for a bit. He was in Jerry Maguire.
Completely, yeah,
All right,
yeah,
so
absolutely.
now Jim Norton
Yeah, of course.
is an extremely good comic and the wrong person to heckle. Just he will eat you alive and enjoy every minute of it. And he's got that voice like this. I know. uh, so anyway, Jay Moore's watching him once, and they're at Stand Up New York, and Norton blinks. He has this tick where he's like, you
Yeah.
know. So Jay says something about his blinking, and Norton says, "Yeah, I went to see Jerry Maguire. I blinked and missed your whole spot." And fucking and now I posted that on something that Sue said it got more hits than what her original post was, because people thought that was so funny, and that was me just repeating something that Norton had said. So some people have that instinct, some people develop it,
Yeah, and
and
it is important to have. Like,
yeah,
if you can work a crowd during your set, like,
it's a
that's an
skill
asset.
set, but there are some people that just have a knack for it. There's a guy named Frank Del Pizzo who you never hear of. Frank Del Pizzo has been a headlining comic for decades. And I used to work with Frank, and I think we had done about 6 shows before I realized that he actually had an act. Because he would do so much crowd work and so much brilliant, successful, and not mean shit, just the ability to talk to somebody and yank something funny out of them,
Yeah.
And I mean, he could go, minutes and minutes and minutes and minutes. And then I saw him once do an act. I was like, and I told him later, Frank, I didn't know you had jokes, man.
Well, that's the thing, is those guys can back it up with killer material. Like, all those comedians, like, the one I think of is Big J. Okerson,
Yeah, yeah,
is I
yeah,
mean, he'll do 2.5 hours on stage if he wants to, and but also if you're like, "Hey, we need you to do just an hour of material." He's one of the best crowd work comics there is.
yeah,
If you need an hour of just straight material, he will give it to you like that, and it's hilarious. But
sure.
there are people who go to open mics and think, "Oh, I'm gonna practice my crowd work." Yeah, because you haven't written anything in the past 2 months, and so you think that's a cop out. It's like it's and here's the thing that I mean, it doesn't upset me. It's their career. Or it's their, it's their time on stage. They can do with it what they want. But you're robbing yourself of an opportunity to develop material. And
Sure.
like, open mics are for building up an act. So if you are just quietly doing
Absolutely.
open mics over weeks and weeks and months, and you go, "Hey, I have a great 15 minutes that just snuck up on people because you're working at it and writing and diligent," that's
Sure.
awesome. But if you just go up to do
Sure.
crowd work, you're not going to develop shit.
Well, look at the guys that are succeeding, and if you've watched them in open mics, they do the same joke over and over because they're honing that joke.
Yeah.
They may add a little nuance here and there that'll pull that joke up to another level, but basically they're working on their delivery, their cadence, their timing, and those are the guys who actually end up succeeding. When you're just at a mic trying to be the funniest guy at the mic, and I've told people that, you're flexing for the bodybuilders, man. It's just not.
Yeah.
It's just wrong. You're not going to accomplish your goal. And I also try to tell people, have a goal. Whenever you go into a mic, what is it that you're going to, if you want to work on crowd work, well, fine. That should be your goal. This mic, I'm not even going to do something. I'm just going to talk to people. This mic, I'm going to work on this joke. This, right? Because if you're not, you're kind of spinning your wheels and going up there and hoping that you're funny enough for the people that are just thinking, get the fuck off and give me my 5 minutes.
Oh, totally. And it's yeah, I mean, there's so many bad habits. And also young comedians it develop those bad habits kind of subconsciously, but yeah, it gets I don't know. It gets old after a while. I wanted to go back to when you were first, cuz when did you move to the Midwest from New York?
Oh, I've only been here 13 years, I think. I
Okay.
moved here because my wife has a home, um, and she would have sold this home to move to New York with me. And I was brilliant in my just prescient knowledge that she would have been miserable in New
There you
York.
go.
She just would have been so unhappy. Um, and listen, I didn't have a house. I said, well, why should she sell everything she owns? I'll move. And to be honest with you, I was ready to move to another environment. Um, I love performing in New York, but it's a grind in ways that you can't it's not that you can't imagine them, but you don't experience them here
Oh yeah.
because you're constantly trying to prove yourself. You're constantly showing, trying to show people I can still perform at this level. Clubs will book you. All of a sudden, guess what? That club has a new booker. Now you got to prove that. And it's like I don't care what the other guy did.
Hmm.
Stand Up New York has gone through like 4 or 5 different bookers since I started doing comedy. It went from the owner, then there were several other people that booked it, and every single one of them doesn't remember what went on 2 bookers before him. So
Right.
you gotta prove yourself to that guy. Clubs get sold, whatever, whatever, whatever. So you're constantly going through hoops to prove that you could still perform at that place and this place. So I knew it was going to be a little bit of a culture shock, but to be honest, I've known for a while that I'm doing comedy for fun.
Yeah.
Okay, I could never make that leap necessary to make it my full time dream. You know, you got to make sacrifices and you got to make choices and people say, oh, comedy's a young man's game. It's a young man's game because that's the only opportunity you have to take those kind of risks.
Right.
For an older person to take that kind of risk, I mean, you can still do it. Rodney Dangerfield succeeded later in his life, but
Oh
he'd
yeah.
also he'd also been writing jokes for decades and decades and decades, and just honing his shtick so that by the time he actually made it, it was easy. But he had a full time job until he didn't. You know,
Right. Oh yeah.
and you know, eh, I think especially in this world, uh, it is so much riskier if you don't have some kind of retirement plan, if you don't have insurance, uh, if you don't have some kind of idea of how you're going to care for yourself in your old age. you
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
and I wasn't willing to take that risk. I'm not. I will always say this, and I've said it before. Hey, I may not be the most successful guy out here, but I'll tell you what, I'm never going to be that comic that people are saying, "Hey, Rod's sick. Why don't we have a benefit for him?" I'm all right. I can handle my business.
So when you started, you said you started when you were like 40, and then you did stand up in New York for about 20 years.
I would say so. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So what do you think were the benefits? Because obviously you could think of the drawbacks, when you're young, you're hungry, oh, I'm just eating ramen, I don't care, all that stuff. But when you're, twice the age of the people that you're starting with, or even like those first 5, 10 years in comedy,
Right.
what do you think the benefits were to you being, older, more mature, a little wiser than the other comics you were around?
Well, more life experience because basically that's all you have. You have an observation of life. Now, I think that obviously younger comics can uh, glom onto something that sets them apart.
Hmm.
But if you ever do a college, you know, you'll realize how little experience people have and be like, hey, so remember when you owned your first house? No, no, we don't. No.
I mean, when you did my show, you practically were doing a college show.
Yeah, but you see, I at this point I have so much of a body of work that I know what'll work and what won't work.
Hmm.
Um, and the other part is I have I have an interest in where I am. A lot of comics don't talk about where they are, where they're from.
Yeah.
They're not talking presently, you know, and and my act is very much about where I am, not only in my life, but in the world and at that moment. I'm aware of the fact that I'm in the Midwest. A lot of comics that are from here never really talk about it. You know,
Yeah.
they
Well,
don't.
but
They don't.
you have that outsider perspective of having moved. I grew up in the Midwest,
Right.
and I made the big leap from Omaha to Lawrence, Kansas. I mean, that was really I'm a traveled man.
See, but that right there. That's hysterical. That's hysterical,
No,
man.
right, but, like, I think people just don't have that because you came from the East Coast, it's very different, and so you're able to pick up on the nuances of the Midwest because you lived in the East Coast for, most of your life.
Yeah, but I still have to make references that people can relate to. You
No,
know,
right.
like one of the first jokes I ever did was about the first mayor, Franken, whatever his name was.
Al
Uh,
Franken?
no,
Who
no,
oh,
the mayor of Kansas City.
yeah, I don't
I
know.
don't even remember his name at this point, but he was this big, lurchy looking. He's just really like weird looking. And I said, well, one of the first things I did when I moved is uh is I voted, and I says, boy, you guys vote for Andy. I said I had no idea that Frankenberry was the mayor of, and just for some reason people cracked because they knew exactly who I was talking about. And when I said that name, that image popped into his head. But people didn't talk about that. A lot of the comics didn't talk about that. I talked about Kathy Quinn, the news reporter, little local things that only local people are going to get. And if I go to Chicago or if I go anywhere out of this immediate area, people aren't going to get that, but I'm going to look at their shit.
Right,
I'm going to look at whatever they got going on and I'm going to talk about that. And that's always a great icebreaker. If you can talk about something that is immediate to that environment, the worst case scenario, you're not going to get a laugh,
right.
but people aren't going to dislike you. The best case scenario is you're going to get a free laugh. You're going to get a
Yeah.
huge laugh, and people are going to be laughing, and you didn't even waste any material.
And that's a good point. Even if they don't laugh, like, "Oh, well, he's picking up on what's going on here, you can at least appreciate that."
Right,
But then,
right,
yeah,
right.
but that is, I mean, that is such an asset to be of like having that real comedian's brain of going everywhere and just analyzing it and picking it apart for the joke.
Well, I think that more to your point, I think the balance is being able to be true to my age and my experience, and also understanding that there are people in your generation that aren't going to catch certain references. So I gotta edit, and I gotta figure out
Yeah,
what is going to appeal to the biggest amount of people. There are other people that I gotta give just enough information in my setup for them to appreciate the punchline. But the quicker thing is that you just realize that technology or that world is past, and you can't really talk about it anymore. You know,
oh yeah,
it's hard.
I mean, Seinfeld did a special like 5 years ago, and he's still doing jokes on answering machines, and I was like, buddy, like this is not. I was like, what are you doing?
Well, yeah, I used to do a bit about the old rotary phone, but I mean the old big one.
Yeah.
And
Shoo.
no, but the old ones, well, I don't know what they were made out of, but they were fucking lethal weapons. They were they were so, like you hit somebody with a plastic phone, the phone has just as much of a chance as breaking as the skull. These old ones, no, you're gonna kill somebody
It's like a
with
lead pipe with a
it
receiver.
really was. It really was something like that. It was just, and I used to talk about it, and it made the coolest sound of all, like shh, 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 you know, and people thought that was a funny joke, and the big premise of the joke was that, say what you will about the old phone, and see, this is the part that's still true, is that
Mhm.
say what you will about the old phone, but every time you picked it up, you got a human being at the other end of it.
Oh yeah.
I said, this is progress, the automated system. I said,
But that's, I mean, that still goes on today. I mean, definitely.
yeah, yeah, that's horrible. The
What do
other,
you
I'm sorry, what?
no, what do you think is the like if you were going to talk to an older comic or even just somebody in general, you seem to do a really good job of staying current both in like pop culture but then also like where the where the world or the country is mentally. You
Yeah.
seem to stay very in tune with that. What do you think are some of the tricks you've learned, or the mentalities you've had to put yourself in to stay current over all these years?
Oh, and listen, I say this every time I have an argument with a conservative, a Trumpster, a MAGA, whatever you want to call them. I say, open a book and read. Now that's I hate to say it like that, but reading is like an anathema. I just finished a book called Fantasyland, and
Okay.
it's a brilliant book, and it basically is about how we got to this state as a country where we are willing to believe any bullshit, where we are willing to believe alternate facts, where we are willing to believe, well, I, it's your beliefs are more important than facts and truth. What
Yeah.
you hold, because you're entitled, that's your right. You have a right to believe what you want, you know. And Trump himself says things like, "Well, I don't know if that's true. I know a lot of people agree with me." You know what? There was a time in the world where everybody agreed the world was flat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was a time where that was just accepted. Oh, the world is flat. Doesn't matter if you're in the majority. But once you are confronted with facts, then it's your right only to deny them.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of reading. I keep up with news. I try not to watch too much of opinion news, so-called
Yeah.
news. It's because
Definitely where the source is matters.
well, yeah, and it's not news. It's just people going on and on and on about their perception of shit.
Yeah.
There's some that's more bullshit than others, and you can make your decisions and your choices. But what?
I love Fox. If Fox to
Yeah.
me, cream of the crop. If you want to get news, Fox, CNN, bunch of bastards.
But I read a lot of books, and books you can fact check, and you can always delve deeper if that is what you want. So I try to keep pace, like I do. I do bits on gun control, but I've read books on the gun issue.
Right.
So I mean, at the very least, I'm informed in some ways. So I think that that's critical if you're going to talk about anything that's topical or in the news. You have to have some kind of uh, some information. Otherwise, it people are going to smell bullshit. This is why people can uh, get away, not get away, but they'll get laughs from an audience that is letting them say really hateful and nasty shit. I was just watching a clip of Ricky Gervais,
Hmm.
bashing trans people, and even if on one level I agree with the basic premise, to get a laugh out of that is dangerous.
Yeah.
It's harmful. It's mean
Interesting.
spirited. I have a bit about trans people, and I'm very, very proud of it. And I ran it
It's
by Cassie, and
it's
I
a
said,
great bit.
I said to Cassie, I said, I want you to give me your honest opinion. Now that's only one trans person's opinion, and I also did it in front of the one that does the
Oh,
Mike and
Stacy?
Woody's. Yeah, Stacey K. And
Yeah.
so I know that what I'm saying is not making people feel uncomfortable, making them feel belittled, making them feel less than,
Yeah.
and I always put myself first. Like I'll preface that by saying, I'm an old man. We're the easiest target of all, you know.
Yeah.
So um, so there are other ways to do it, but you can only do that from a position of information. Information gives you strength. So if you're talking about anything current, uh, you need that. And it's the same with pop culture. You know, I like hip hop. I like it enough that I've seen. And there's a comic who we took a kind of instant dislike to each other.
Okay.
And this person has blocked me on a number of occasions and made it hard for me to get work. And
By the way, Brock
yeah.
Bristow is a piece of shit, and I'll say that first and foremost.
I love Brock, man. Red-headed demon. Uh, what we were going back and forth, and I made up a little hip hop thing for him, and he responded, "Oh, look, the old man discovered hip hop," and I was like, "You realize how arrogant that sounds? That the kid from Oklahoma City thinks he knows more about hip hop than
Yeah.
the kid who grew up in the boogie down, from the birthplace of hip hop, who has seen hip hop grow in its entirety.
Yeah,
You
I
know what I
mean,
mean? So
you
you're
were
gonna tell me I don't know anything, and all you got to go about that is my age. You're gonna use that to discredit what I think I know or my opinion about something. But uh, there have been comics, and I mean fairly good and successful ones who'll do raps and they'll go, "Oh yeah, a do boo doo boop boop doo doo a doo doo," and I'm like, "How the fuck nobody ever sounded like that?"
yeah.
The first hip hop song in the world didn't sound like that.
Well, and I think to what we were talking about at the beginning of this, you also will talk to younger people about what's going on, what they're interested in, and what the pop culture is. You just
You have to,
yeah.
man. You have to. If I mean, the world is passing us by, and it passes by more quickly even than young people know. I know because I've seen so much of it pass by,
Mhm.
but I know artists that aren't even that old in my mind that if I talk to people today, who, what,
Right.
you know, what, you know, I, I play sometimes hip hop where I work, and like I'm like, yo, who's this? Huh? What? You know, and I'll tell them, oh yeah, I knew that was Buster. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, you actually kind of didn't. Yeah,
Yeah. See,
because the culture changes so quickly that what's hot today is gone tomorrow, and I think that it happens even faster now. So,
oh
you
yeah, the
know,
internet sped it up so much. I mean, it is like by the time you see something for the first time, it's already old news.
right.
Like it's so fast. I can't hear you, Rod.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Uh, I always thought that I would keep up with technology, but I have to admit that there are certain things where I'm like, that's a bridge too far.
I'm
Like
barely keeping up with technology.
I can't do streaming music. I can't. I can't. First of all, as long as I have a capacity to pay an artist, even if it's a couple of cents, I'm going to buy the music.
Mhm.
That's first. Second of all, I like to create my playlist, and I don't care about having so much memory. I think I had like the Spotify that you pay $10, and I reached a point where it was like, "Oh no, you don't have enough memory." I said, "Well, what's the point?
Right.
What's the point? I got more memory on my iPod, and I got like what a ye old fashioned iPods, and I'm gonna enjoy that. And one of the reasons I bought an iPhone is because I can use that capacity of it to store music and play what I want to play and what I want to hear.
Mhm.
So, but that's just one technology or advance in the way people listen to music that I don't care. I hope I'm dead before the next thing comes.
Oh yeah. I feel it sometimes where I'm 20 and I'm already like getting passed by culture, technology. Like, I swear to God, I didn't listen to a single song that was created after 1985 till I met my girlfriend. Like, and she's an old music fan too. she's introduced me to the most modern music I like and the oldest music I like.
Wow, that's
She's like, oh yeah,
that's a keeper.
she's a music. I mean, she listens to so much different stuff. Plays music too. I mean, ton of different instruments. She actually, I'm gonna give her a shout out because she always asks for this. She made the intro and outro to this podcast. If you listen to the first 30 seconds or the last 30 seconds,
Oh,
she made the music, and she's awesome. But yeah, she introduced me to like there's a band we went to on Halloween night. Never heard of them. They're now like I can't stop listening to a modern band, Sammy Ray and the Friends, like a funk kind of jazzy pop band. They're great. She also introduced me to like, hey, here's Robert Johnson.
oh,
Yeah, here's
really?
like Blind.
The
Yeah, here's like,
crossroads.
oh yeah, she's like, here's Blind Blake. I'm like, oh man, and she's like, show me like, okay, this is Blind Blake was from the north. Robert Johnson was from the south.
Well,
Blind
she
Blake's a little
probably
more
knows more of
ragtime.
the musicality of than musicology than I do.
She's
But
yeah.
I bet you she would know a lot of the artists that I know, like Sun House, um, Howling Wolf. But Wolf was
Oh,
actually even
Howlin' Wolf is great.
yeah.
Oh yeah, he's I mean, interesting. Definitely, some people like his voice, some people don't. I also listen to Rush, so like Geddy Lee is one of the most like divisive rock voices ever. So I get it.
He is. As a matter of fact, I was just watching a movie with my wife yesterday, and they kept playing a Rush song over and over. And we were talking about it. I said that. So I guess that's Geddy Lee. She says, I would have to assume so, considering it's been Rush the entire movie.
Yeah.
Um, I actually saw them.
Really?
Yeah. I was
Oh,
annoyed because,
love
I
Rush.
was sitting I got tickets from a friend who used to work for Marriott, the hotel chain,
Okay.
and Marriott, like a lot of corporations, has a luxury box. So I was sitting in a luxury box, which is luxury, but not the best seat. You have a front seat, but you're way up.
Mhm.
But they give you the option to be taken, escorted down, and they'll seat you in an area, and you
Ooh.
can be a lot closer. But when I went to do that, everybody in the audience was singing along. I was like, I don't give a fuck that you know the lyrics.
Yeah.
Shut up.
That's a
I want to hear them. Shut
That's a
up.
Rush thing. Every Rush fan knows every lyric to every song. I mean, it is, yeah, cult following. That's, by the way, running theme of this podcast. If I've mentioned one thing on more podcasts than anything else, it's that I love Rush. Like that is like I was talking with a woman, Steph O'Sullivan. She's a the lead singer of an Irish alt rock band that is
Okay.
just blew up this summer, and they're gonna start touring a new album. They're awesome. But like even like interviewing this fascinating person from around the world, I'm like, okay, so I read in an interview that your manager really likes Rush. Can we talk about Rush for 2 minutes? It was like the most random shit ever.
Yeah, I was never like uh, enamored with them. I do like the bigger hits, like I like Tom Sawyer. How could you not?
Right.
But I wouldn't know more their more obscure stuff. Um,
Oh yeah, that is a hot topic band. Like my girlfriend does not like Rush. My her dad loves Rush. By the way, that's been a and I have one more question, but that's been like a big help with meeting my girlfriend's like parents and family and stuff because I listen to all the same music that they do.
right?
So first time I ever met her dad, I was like, I heard you're a Rush and Pink Floyd fan. He was like, yes, let's talk. And like 2 weeks later, he gives me a DVD of Pink Floyd at Pompeii. I
Wow,
was
wow,
like,
wow.
all right, we're gonna
Okay,
be friends
now
now.
I need for you to hurt my feelings.
Okay.
How old are your girlfriend's parents?
Oh, mid 50s.
Mm,
And then I mean they're around where you would expect for like a 20-year-old's, parents.
Well, yeah. I guess I'm just. I think I think I may have referenced you once. Yeah, you were hosting, I think, at at the comedy club, and I said, I can deal with being twice as old as somebody, but when I'm three times, it's like really, I have to wonder if it's all worth it.
Oh, that's great. That is great. I believe getting ragged on from anybody is great, but from you, it really means a lot. So, Rod, I have one more question.
Fire.
You started stand up when you were 40,
Right.
uh, and have been, I mean, very successful and really just one of the funniest comics in the scene since I've been here for
Oh,
past
thank
couple
you,
of years
man. I
at least.
appreciate that. I appreciate that.
What advice would you give to people who want to start a hobby, passion project, whatever it may be, um, who feels intimidated because they're a little older than the rest of the people starting out?
Oh, you need to talk to David Scott. All right.
Yeah, I do. I do need to talk to David.
Because I started when I was 40, which would put me about 20 years ahead of 25 years ahead. You know,
Right.
like a lot of years before David. You know, that's a guy who started absolutely as a senior
He
citizen,
started when he retired.
and he's done really well. Now he's at a point in his life where, like, yeah, retired means he has tons of time
Hmm.
on their hands. So I have to say that if you're going to start later in life, you have to make realistic decisions about what you want out of this. If you really think that you have the passion and you really think that your dream could be to succeed as a stand up comic, and mind you, it is very, very difficult to measure success as a stand up comic because there are different levels.
Hmm.
All right. James Johan is a hugely successful comic. This is a guy that makes his living at it. Okay. He
Yeah.
pays his bills. He owns a house. You know, he works cruise ships. He does what he has to do, you know, and that is something that he has to constantly work at, you know. So you have to make realistic decisions about what level you want to succeed at and what you're willing to sacrifice, because the other end of it is, you know, you didn't put enough away, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, and I'm not saying you can't do that if you're working at and putting away enough as a comic to do that,
Right.
but it takes a whole different level of discipline, because now you don't have a company taking money out of, you know, for your 401k. That's you. How much do you make that you can say, I'm going to defer gratification until later? I'm not going to
Yeah.
be that guy. So that's all I would say to anybody starting this out as a hobby, as a passion, you know, as a whatever, as fun. Try it out. Have fun with it till it's no longer fun. That
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would do stand-up comedy past a point where, well, I shouldn't say that because there's a couple that I can
There's
think
yeah,
of
definitely
that
people. Oh, for
I
sure.
was like, throw the towel.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, but
You're done.
if it gives them pleasure, who am I to say that? You know,
Hmm.
who am I to tell somebody you shouldn't be doing this? So I would just say that you have disadvantages, but you also have advantages because you have lived a little bit more of a life, and depending on how deeply you want to delve into your life's pain,
Yeah.
will determine how much how much success you have with with your material. Or unless you're a good, you know, you could still be a good joke writer older age. I mean, Rodney talked about, you know, oh, my wife, you know, who knows how much
Right.
of that was true.
Oh, yeah,
No,
of course.
he could have said anything.
But and I also think there is something to like you said, it's what expectations do you have? What do you want to get out of it? Because there are people who, hey, I started this when I was 43. I go to one or two open mics a week and I just love it and that's all I want. I just get on stage and I tell my jokes and
Now,
I there's part of me that envies that. Like, you know what? This is just this. I do this for me, and I have fun, and that's it.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
what are your parents as business people, and
Yeah.
uh, with the Gordman legacy? What do they think about you going into the comedy and?
Legacy is definitely an interesting word for what we got going on. I don't know about that much. Especially not my family. Our legacy might be shitty dad jokes at the dinner table, and that's about it. But uh, I would say, I mean, it's definitely changed over the years. When I first told my parents I wanted to do stand up, I was 14 years old, and it was like no shot in hell. Yeah, well, I knew I wanted to do stand up when I was 14, and then I first got on stage when I was 16, and that was a lot of begging and pleading and come on, I want to do an open, come on, just let's do it. And it was they were very worried that I would say one off color thing on stage and that'd be the end of my not comedy career. My mom told me one time, I'm worried that you'll say something and you'll never be able to go to college because you said something at an open mic. Yeah.
I could see that thinking, but again, it goes back to what I was talking about earlier. If you research your material and your material comes from a place of information, then even people who don't like that joke can't really say that you're doing out of ignorance and meanness.
Yeah.
You have a counterpoint.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, my mom just she didn't know how low stakes
Right,
doing an open mic is. And
right,
I mean, it was new to both of them, absolutely, and they
right,
thought, yeah, it would be some Cat Williams,
right.
which I was like, by the way, that would be off color for a number of reasons if I started doing his act. That was the reception early on, and then I went and my dad had to okay the jokes. I gave them to him like that night at dinner.
Oh
He's
my
reading over
God.
everything, and then he would go, "Okay, now I gotta come with you to make sure that you do these jokes and
Oh,
not some other stuff."
that's really funny.
So that was the first 2 open
That's
mics,
really funny.
and, then I did, like, 5, and then I didn't do any over the summer, and then I came back in August and hit it pretty hard. But it was,
You know Aaron Branch, don't you?
repeat the name?
Aaron Branch.
Not sure.
He's a kid from this area that got started when he was young, and he was doing comedy when he was about 16. And his mother would drive him to all the shows, and he did really well. And when he left, when he moved to California, well, actually, he went to school in Chicago first. So when he went to school in Chicago, everybody gave him a roast, and it was funny. I had some good jokes for him,
Yeah.
basically, because I told him, I said, "Oh, you know what, you're 18 and a night." Yeah, he was about 18, 19. I said, you know what? I said, when Mozart was 6, he'd already written 3 concertos and 2 operas. I said, so and so, Shirley Temple had made 10 movies. I said, you are the worst prodigy ever. But the joke of the night was Brandon Murphy, a kid who used to do comedy a while back now, doesn't do it anymore. And he says, Aaron, you get on stage and you're always talking about how you can't get a date. Well, stop bringing your mother to your shows.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, it was, it was interesting starting young, man. I mean, it was probably interesting starting when you started too. I think it just all depends on where everybody is.
I will say this comedy rewards longevity. If you
Mhm.
stick around long enough, somebody's going to tap you on the shoulder and call your name. I did a couple of commercials, and I'll probably do a couple of more. You know, I love it. It's just amazing, but it's because I stuck around long enough for that opportunity to be able to present itself.
Yeah.
So if you stay around long enough, somebody's going to say, "Hey, you know who'd be good for this? Spencer. Where is he? Oh, I don't see him. Where's the next best thing?" So
Mhm.
you got to be there when the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, and I think that's a great message to leave this on. Rod, where can people, if people want to come see you live or just find your social media, where can people find you on social
I
media?
am on Facebook. I am on Instagram. I generally just post whatever flyer I'm going to be at any given time. I don't do the whole I'm going on tour because it just takes too long to compile
Hmm.
a list. But if you go to Facebook, friend me.
Rod Reyes.
Certainly, I yeah, Rod Reyes. I uh, I have actually have more success on TikTok than anywhere else. I rarely post comedy information, and if you follow me on TikTok, do not like any of my posts because you will get stuck on the political algorithm and you don't want to be there. You can give me a private message or hey Rod, I like that, but yeah, don't like that don't like my political posts.
And Rod is Instagram hippest old man, just
That
one word. Is it same on
that's it.
TikTok as well?
Yeah. It's always hippest old man. I'm
Hippest old
also
man.
on I'm also on Twitter, but I don't have the blue check, and
You didn't want to
so
pay the $8.
yeah, I'm not. I thought it was. I just got an invitation at $11. I'm like,
No, they're already jacking up the prices. The Elon Musk experiment is running its course. If you
dude,
want to,
I have to say,
yeah,
I haven't done a lot of podcasts, and I always think they're going to end up the same. This has been absolutely the most fun.
I really do appreciate that. Again, I think I worry a lot about quality of product and making sure it's fun. And the biggest thing is if, and this is with the show, with the podcast, with anything I do, if you and I aren't having a fun time, and if the comedians at the show aren't having a fun time, the audience will not have a fun time either, listening, watching, whatever they're doing. So if we're
I
having fun, they're gonna
I,
have fun. If the comedians are having fun, the audience will have fun.
I absolutely believe that. Hey, I'm going to play you a song before I go.
Here, let me plug my stuff, and then we'll jam out and call this thing a day.
All
Uh,
right.
on their way up podcast. Subscribe wherever you're listening. You can also watch it on YouTube or on Spotify. There's also a watchable version if you want to see Rod and I's beautiful faces. Uh, and then, yeah, just on their way up, subscribe where you're listening. Instagram and Twitter for all the updates when podcasts are coming out, who's going to be on them, clips. And then I'm Spencer Gordman, Spencer_Gordman on Instagram and TikTok, or Spencer Gordman on Facebook. Friend me, follow me, all that good stuff. Thank you for listening, everybody. Have a good one. Take care.